February was a really busy month. For some reason I decided to start a blind playthrough of Dark Souls 3 2 weeks before Hogwarts Legacy came out, knowing damn well I was going to be playing that day one.
Stupid!
So the middle of the month was a big balancing act between those two games until I beat the main story of Dark Souls 3. I'm gonna return to that and play through the DLC after I beat Hogwarts, but it felt like a good point to pause. Neither of those games are going to be featured in this video though. I want to give Dark Souls its own video at some point. Don't expect it anytime soon, and I really just want to take my time and enjoy Hogwarts. I don't have any plans to make a video on that, cause yeah. I also started uploading shorts around the middle of February, so that was time consuming, but I still managed to squeeze in a few games throughout the month. First on the list for February is Okay, so imagine a roguelike with the gameplay of Borderlands that takes place in a world where everything is a robot. You actually don't have to imagine it because it's on your screen right now. The gameplay here is just as fun and chaotic as you'd imagine it to be based on that premise, and I'm really here for the sudden rise of FPS roguelikes. There's a ton of weapons and build diversity for you to mess around with, which give this game basically limitless replayability, but the standout for me with this was the intense flow state you can get into with the right build. You get in this zone where you're dodging enemy projectiles, returning fire, and weaving in abilities, and before you know it, you've cleared an entire room. The projectile and precision weapons were probably the most satisfying to master for me. I also really like the comic book aesthetic of Roboquest. Everything from the straight up comic book cutscenes to the little words that fly off your weapons as you shoot and reload. I didn't play too much of this, but definitely not because I didn't enjoy the little bit of time I spent on it. This was just a really stacked month and I wanted to try some other games, but I can definitely see myself returning to this in the future. So believe it or not, Fortnite is actually the reason I bought and played this. I've really been enjoying the BMX stuff that they added last season, and I got a random YouTube recommendation for this, thought it looked fun, and it happened to be on sale right then. I figured for $17, it was worth a try. If you learn anything from this channel, let it be that you should never pay full price for a Ubisoft game. So I played a lot of this in the days before Hogwarts Legacy released, and I've got a lot to say about it. The good news is that the gameplay here is excellent. Racing games tend to not be my thing, so I naturally gravitated towards the trick events, and I think that's part of the beauty here. After you unlock all of the events, you aren't really forced to play any of the ones that you don't like. The snow events were by far my favorites, but I was surprised at how much I liked the biking ones too. I didn't really care for the air events though. I didn't mind the wingsuit, but the rocket pack events are just regular races and I don't think they control very well. But everything else here is really responsive and it just feels good to ride down a hill at 80 miles an hour or land a really tough trick. The bad news is that this is one of those games as a services that doesn't really need to be, and I think that really shoots this game in the back of the kneecaps. This causes a lot of annoyances like not being able to play this at all offline, but here's what really soured the experience for me. By now we should all know that I'm a little slut for character customization, and the game makes you think it's got some good stuff on offer, especially since it's always online and you're constantly seeing people with these cool jackets and masks and helmets. So after a few events you'll have a decent amount of in-game currency saved up, and naturally you'll go to the shop to get some of that cool cosmetic stuff you've been seeing, but then you find out that it's on a rotating shop with a pretty small selection, probably to induce FOMO, and on top of that, most of what's available can only be bought with the premium currency.
I feel like that's false advertising, especially considering what I am paying for these courses.
It's weird predatory practices like this that I think everyone is tired of with these live service elements in games that don't need them. And even though I had a lot of fun with this, it's hard not to think about how much better it could have been without them. Now, I know what some of you are thinking. This is not the most recent game in the Cook Serve Delicious series. Well, here's a fun story. I didn't realize that I had Cook Serve Delicious 3 hiding in my Epic Games library until I had already recorded the footage you're watching and almost finished the script for this segment. Gotta love having multiple game libraries. I've since downloaded GOG and this is what my entire gaming library looks like. On PC. Not including my consoles.
Stop it. Get some help.
At least I can keep this series going for a while. Anyway, along with gaming, cooking is my other big go-to coping mechanism for the woes of life, so naturally cooking games and cooking in games is always something that interests me. I've actually played this a little before, I think to get b-roll for a video, and I remember liking it then, but I'm sure I was too busy playing something else to give it the time it deserves. This is a fully keyboard operated game, and gameplay consists of using specific keys to complete orders and manage your restaurant. It starts out pretty uncomfortable, especially if like me you aren't used to typing games, but once you start memorizing which keys go to which ingredients and you start pumping out orders, that's when it starts to get fun. When rush hour comes and you've got a full list of orders with timers ticking down, the experience gets so chaotic, and this game honestly kind of gives me a little bit of anxiety, but not in a bad way. You never really feel like the load is too much to bear. There's some customization here with the decorations for your restaurant and the ability to choose which dishes you serve, which obviously is another thing I enjoyed. Cooks Serve Forever had a demo during the Steam Fest while I was playing this, and that also seems like it's going to be pretty fun. It uses a controller and it seems like they're making the overall experience less claustrophobic, but I can see this getting just as crazy as the previous mainline games. So this is gonna sound weird, but I've never really played Tetris. I'm sure that over the course of my 2.5-decade gaming career, I've touched a Tetris game, but never for long enough for it to leave an impression or to definitively say which games I've played. I'm not exaggerating when I say that this has been downloaded on my PC for over a year and I've never booted it up until now. And that's exactly what I'm hoping this series does for me. Push me to play or at least try those games that I've had my eye on but haven't played for one reason or another. I obviously don't need to explain the gameplay here, it's Tetris, but what I do want to talk about is the atmosphere that this game brings. Tetris Effect is a lot more about the experience than the gameplay to me. In my opinion, you absolutely need to be playing this with headphones and controller vibrations, and I'm someone that usually hates having vibration on. Every stage has unique visuals, music, and sounds that play when you rotate or move pieces. That maybe doesn't sound like a big deal, but it really does a lot to immerse you into the game. A really interesting thing that I noticed while playing through this is that as you clear lines and make your way closer to reaching the level requirement, you're also always building up something in the background, be it music or an evolving background image. I actually think this would be a really good example of games being a form of art for the people that still don't think they are. Another thing that stood out to me here is just like in Roboquest, when everything is clicking, you get into a really nice flow state. But what's interesting is that it didn't really feel like the same type. It's kind of hard to explain, but in Roboquest it felt like I had this really intense honed in focus on the gameplay, but here it was like everything else was muted and I had a relaxing zen-like tunnel vision on Tetris. And that's a wrap on February. I'm a little surprised at how many games I managed to cram into this month given how short and busy it was. I'm still making my way through Hogwarts Legacy and I don't even think I'm halfway done, so don't be surprised when you hear about that in March's video, but I've already played a couple really good games this month that I'm excited to talk about. If you've made it this far, I'm gonna assume that you liked the video, so do me a favor and leave a like for me. If you really liked it and you don't want to miss next month's video or any of my other gaming content, you can sub to the channel so you know whenever I upload. Thank you for sticking around until the end, and I'll see you in the next one.